Good morning from paradise. My name is Crypto Amaru. We are back with another daily rundown. It is Monday, March 10th. A lot to cover today. We had the big executive order around the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve happening on Friday. Of course, today we're seeing a major correction or continued correction on the stock market, crypto markets, recession fears perhaps rearing their ugly head. Today's video is going to be a bit more hopium based, a bit more positive. We're going through it right now, and we want Crypto Paradise to be a place where you guys can come, find some solace, feel better about the markets, think a little bit long term about things. So I want to talk about 4 or 5 reasons why the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve is actually extremely bullish for the digital asset space. It's not being priced in yet, to my estimation, and long term, it's really a huge bullish catalyst for this industry. But before we get into that, this is the only channel, Crypto Paradise, that is giving away 3 free nights to paradise. If you guys want to step away from the charts, ignore the noise for a little bit, rest and recharge, just hit us up. The Paradise Pad is available to you. Let us know if you want to stay 3 free nights. Okay. All right, so big executive order over, I shouldn't say over the weekend. It happened on Friday, right? And a couple things. Let's talk about the price action for a second, and then we'll get to the actual substance of the order and why I think it's actually huge for crypto. Look, oftentimes when you have a big announcement, it's a buy the rumor, sell the news phenomenon where you have a big run up in price leading up to the announcement, and then when the thing actually occurs, people sell. This is a phenomenon that's well documented across the stock market, crypto markets. It's a known thing. So buy the rumor, sell the news. Understand that, and you can expect to see some volatility once the news itself, the event occurs. And so we saw that. But what did this remind me of? This reminded me of the Bitcoin ETF approval, which, if you recall, happened on, I believe it was January 11th, 2024. Leading up to the approval, obviously there's news about, or there's some rumors about it, there's information coming out about it, markets running up, then the ETF gets approved by the SEC, and we have a 5%, I believe, correction. I think it ran to 40 leading up to it, and then we crashed down to around 35. But guess what? About 2 months later, 2 to 3 months later, I think by beginning of April, Bitcoin had run back up to 70,000. So you don't want to read too much into the near-term price action before you evaluate the impact of a particular event. Buy the rumor, sell the news. That phenomenon oftentimes distorts things a little bit and can make you misanalyze things, frankly. So this very much reminds me of that. You have in terms of this Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, it is a industry-wide validation. It's a sort of a stamp of approval from the powers that be, very much like the ETF was. A stamp of approval, a validation from Wall Street. Now you have a stamp of approval and a validation from the highest levels of government, arguably the most powerful government and most influential government in the entire world, now is essentially validating this asset and this asset class. Okay, so why was it that everyone was sort of disappointed and the market didn't react as perhaps we had hoped? Obviously, buy the rumor, sell the news. But the executive order did not include any requirement, at least near-term requirement or order, that the government purchase Bitcoin. But if you've been watching this channel, as I hope that you have, you will have understood that there was almost a 0% chance that the order would have contained a requirement for the government to purchase Bitcoin. And you say, well, Crypto Amaru, how is that the case? This is what everyone had been talking about. Well, those talking heads either did not have an understanding of U.S. constitutional law and the concept of the separation of powers, or they did have that knowledge and they just purposely misled you, or for whatever other reason they got it wrong. But this channel has been consistent in telling you guys that the order itself could never, at least not constitutionally allowed, could never require the federal government to outright purchase Bitcoin. And the reason for this is that the Constitution of the United States is very clear. There are 3 branches of government, co-equal branches of government. They all have their own roles and responsibilities. Congress, the House and the Senate, that's the Congress, are the ones who control the purse. They control the spending, right? That's why every year Congress has to approve a budget. It's not the president who decides how much to spend and where. The president has other roles, other responsibilities, and the powers of the executive have expanded greatly over the years. But still, the president could not have legally and constitutionally required that the government buy Bitcoin. That's going to have to be something that Congress does, or there may be other mechanisms whereby, and the order is very, this is again where I think people misread the importance of the order. The order says that they can find budget neutral ways to buy Bitcoin. And you may be able to do that through executive order. We'll have to see. But to me, it was highly unrealistic that this initial order was going to say, all right, the U.S. is now going to buy XYZ amount of Bitcoin. That's why Senator Cynthia Loomis, I believe from Wyoming, has drafted legislation that will go before Congress to be voted upon on this very issue. Because she knew, and everyone in government knows and understands, that that is the province of Congress, the power of the purse. So it was highly unlikely that the government, or the executive order, I should say, was going to require the government to purchase Bitcoin in this first iteration of this order. But the very fact that the United States government now has a Bitcoin strategic reserve on the books is a massive thing for this industry. It is probably the most significant event since the ETF. And here's a few reasons why I think long-term extremely bullish for the industry. And we're going to look back and say, wow, I can't believe the thing, we didn't buy the dip. In a year from now, wherever the case may be, can't believe we didn't buy this dip. So here's why I think this Bitcoin Strategic Reserve is extremely bullish. One, it provides now the political cover that the GOP-led states, the red states, the Republican-led states, it provides them the political cover to approve their own strategic reserves. We know that there were 17 or 18 states that had already put forth similar type legislation. Some of those states, it's stalled out. Other states, it's progressed forward. One state, Utah, actually has passed the strategic reserve, to my knowledge. However, they omitted the requirement to buy the Bitcoin. But Texas is still in play, Oklahoma is still in play, and I believe other Republican-led states will start to follow suit. And here's why. Donald Trump is the undisputed leader of this party. What he likes and what he says, people get behind. The Republicans get behind, not the Democrats. The Republicans get behind. And so this now provides political cover for the likes of Texas, Oklahoma, Utah, etc., to approve their own strategic reserve. And they don't have stockpiles of Bitcoin, unlike the federal government, which does have a stockpile, and we'll get to that in a second. But Texas, for example, should they pass a strategic reserve law of their own, would need to actually go out and purchase Bitcoin. So we'll see where things go from a state level standpoint, but this provides the political cover and just has greatly increased the likelihood that any number of these states pass their own strategic reserve. So that's bullish reason number one. On I guess similar related note, from an international standpoint, we've now sparked, you could call a Bitcoin arms race among our competitor countries out there and among our allies as well, who will not want to be left behind in this digital revolution. They will not want to be the ones that bought in last. And if you are a nation state, a China, a Russia, a Saudi Arabia, even a Germany, in England, or UK, I should say, Canada, Mexico, whatever, you now have an incentive to explore this and to pull the trigger on it because you do not want to be left behind. Nation state FOMO. It's a term I've been seeing on X. I love it. There's a lot of truth to it. And we already see reports that China is exploring their own strategic reserve. And I think you're going to see trickle of more reports coming out vis-a-vis other countries who are exploring this and will ultimately pull the trigger on it because they do not want to be left behind. So United States, the first domino to fall, the U.S. government, right? And then who comes next? States within the U.S. and then nation states as well. So that's a huge positive sort of result from the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. Another one, why I'm extremely bullish. Similarly, on a company standpoint, it provides them validation, them cover. If you are a company that's listed on the NASDAQ, SP 500, or even just a small operation, right? You now, again, have that validation. It's that credibility. It's that approval that the federal government's jumping into the water, so to speak. Now you can, if you want to. Much less stigma around this asset class and much more than likelihood that other companies jump into Bitcoin strategic reserve strategy, the likes of MicroStrategy or now Strategy have been doing, and many others. So I think you'll start to see more companies buying in. Another reason why I'm extremely bullish. Let's think about if this didn't happen, right? The United States government allegedly holds somewhere between 190,000 to 200,000 Bitcoins, which, at least as of Friday, was about $18 billion, probably less now. That is a lot of sell pressure. Should have Biden won. Excuse me, not Biden, Kamala. Should it had Kamala won, this never would have happened. And that Bitcoin would have likely been sold, just like the U.S. government sold all its other holdings in the past. That's $18 billion worth of sell pressure. Around 200,000 Bitcoins, which if the supply is only 21 million and a lot of it's been lost, that's actually pretty significant percentage of the supply which will not be sold. Tons of potential sell pressure just got removed from the order books now and in the future. So the very fact the U.S. government is simply holding this amount of Bitcoin, to me, incredibly bullish. Okay, how about the fact that the U.S. government and that order did not require the purchases of any new Bitcoin? Well, I think looking at it and just thinking about things from a 2-day perspective is extremely short-sighted. The order was very clear that the U.S. shall explore ways in which they can purchase more Bitcoin, but it has to be budget neutral and not cost the taxpayers any money. Well, you ask yourself, how is that possible? If Congress has to do it, isn't that going to cost the taxpayer money? Well, not necessarily. There's a few different ways. Apparently, there's some money sitting in some funds somewhere. I saw some reports on this. I'll try to pull it up. That could be tapped into. 40 billion, I think I saw somewhere. That there was some money set aside for something. Could perhaps be used to purchase Bitcoin. How about the cuts that Doge is making, right? Department of Government Efficiency. Apparently, they've found 55 billion or so worth of savings, and I'm sure they will continue to find savings, right? There is a multitude of ways that the government can, in fact, buy Bitcoin, which would be taxpayer neutral, perhaps through the Sovereign Wealth Fund. We haven't yet heard too much more news on the Sovereign Wealth Fund plan from Donald Trump, but my guess is that is coming at some point. An announcement and details around that is coming at some point, perhaps using the profits generated from the Sovereign Wealth Fund, use it to buy Bitcoin. There's a multitude of areas. The tariffs. We know Trump loves tariffs. We've talked ad nauseum about tariffs on this channel. Perhaps the tariffs and the funds generated through those import taxes could be used to buy Bitcoin. So there's a multitude of areas and sources of revenue that are taxpayer neutral that could be used to buy Bitcoin in the future. So I think people who looked at this and were disappointed, they looked at the short-term price action, they said it was a big nothing burger. I think you guys are absolutely missing the big story here, the big picture here. Massive validation for this industry. It now provides political cover for states to pursue their own strategic reserve in which Bitcoin would need to be bought. It now is a domino that will lead to other nation states, China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and the like, to purchase Bitcoin through their own strategic reserves, or at very least, just HODL on to the existing Bitcoin that they've themselves confiscated, right? Very positive catalyst in that sense. The US now, instead of selling those, say, 200,000 Bitcoin, are HODLing onto them. That is a lot of sell pressure gone. And then finally, there is a very good chance that Trump and that administration will find budget neutral ways to purchase more Bitcoin in the future. So this was a huge deal. This was an event on par with the Bitcoin ETF. Yes, short-term price action, disappointing. You'll remember with the ETF too, the inflows were disappointing in the beginning as well. Like, oh, where's the money? Why aren't they investing in it? Where's Wall Street? I remember there was a bunch of complainers out there. But the reality was that Bitcoin ETF ended up being the most successful ETF in the history of ETFs. So let's just take a step back, slow down, wide view, and imagine for a second that this never happened. This is a huge event for Bitcoin and for crypto. Don't get stuck in the here and now. Think big picture, think long term, and we'll see you guys on the beach.